I am here with my favorite reads of 2023. These are in no particular order. I did not rank them. I don't want to rank them. That does not sound like fun to me. They are just in the order that I found them on my still unorganized bookcases. The first book that I have here is The Dead Romantics by Ashley Poston. This book was, I'm going to say this book was a delight, but like all of these books were a delight in one way or another. They're my favorite reads of the year. This book is about somebody, I forget everybody's names in these books, Florence. This book is about a woman named Florence who is a ghostwriter for a very, very famous author. She's finishing this author's series out, and she gets a new editor who she thinks is super hot. After their first meeting, they end up seeing each other at a bar and they make out. And then she gets a call that her father has passed away. So she has to go home and deal with that. Her family owns a funeral home, and she also can see ghosts. She grew up being able to see ghosts. Her dad was the only person who believed her. And while she's home visiting her family and planning her father's funeral, a ghost shows up at the door, who is her editor, who she just made out with a couple days prior. And she's like, "When did you die?" What? And so it is the story of that. It's delightful. It's funny. It's heartwarming. It's got a lot of like really, I guess like relatable things for authors and writers, because she's a writer who feels like she's not good enough. And I read this one in a weekend. This one is a very fast read, and I also had a lot of trouble reading pretty much anything quickly this year. So to say that I read this in a weekend is saying something. Next one that I have here is the entirety of Spy Family by Tatsuya Endo. I have the rest here. I read all 10 volumes this year. This series gives me so much joy. I can't handle it. It makes me laugh out loud so much. It's so funny and it's so silly. It also has some nice little heartwarming moments in it too, and it's exciting, but mostly it's hilarious and super silly. And it puts me, like, I can be in a terrible mood, and these books will make me laugh out loud. Spy Family is about a spy who has to get a fake family in order for his big, long mission. And he needs a wife and a child, and the child needs to go to this private school and do well in this private school. So the person that he finds who will marry him is an assassin. He is obviously keeping his spy identity from her. So she doesn't know that he's a spy. He doesn't know that she's an assassin. And they both have very exciting lives that they keep from each other. And the child that they adopt, Anya, is a telepath, which she also keeps a secret. So none of the family members know about the other family members' superpowers / super dangerous jobs. They all think they're just a delightful little family, except for Anya knows everything, since she can read minds. And part of what makes it hilarious is trying to keep their identities a secret from each other, and Anya knowing that they're trying to keep things a secret, and her trying to help the other person with their secrets without them knowing that's what she's doing. It's fantastic. Also, they end up getting a dog who can tell the future. The only person who knows that he can tell the future is Anya, because she can read his mind. It is so good. My favorite manga series in the entire world. The next one here is volume 3 of Fang Girl, the manga. This one was originally written in English, so it's not backwards. I loved Fang Girl when I read it many years ago, and I love the manga series so much. First of all, I really love manga artwork, and this, like, it's exactly the same as the book, except with facial expressions, which is just, like, it makes me feel like that when I read these, because they're so cozy, and whenever there's like problems in the story, it makes me just feel for the characters like that much more, because I can see them. So good. Anyway, anyone who doesn't know what Fangirl is about, It's about a girl who's very popular on a fan fiction website. It's fan fiction for Simon Snow, which is this universe's version of Harry Potter, basically. And everybody loves her fan fiction, and it's super, super popular. And she wrote it with her sister, her twin sister, who they were like joined at the hip growing up. And now they're in university, and her sister has kind of changed her identity a little bit. She wants to like break out of her shell and do different things and not hang out with the main character, Kath. And so Kath feels very isolated and alone, and she is just trying to make it through university with anxiety and feeling like she doesn't fit in anywhere, while also trying to write the Simon Snow fan fiction. So what she's doing is she's trying to write her own version of the 8th book in the series before the actual 8th book comes out. And you get snippets of her fan fiction, and you also get snippets of the series that her fan fiction is based off of. And it's a wonderful story. The next one that I have here is Akathar's Greatest Trick by Jason DeRoe. This is the first book in a 9-book series, I think. It is about a fantastical world that has magic, but the magic has been outlawed. And it follows a bunch of characters, but I feel like the main theme of this one is that one of the main characters it follows is a stage magician and his crew. And it also follows these, I forget the names of them, I forget a lot of very like specific details from most of these books. But there's like these military people whose job it is to find people who are using magic because it's outlawed. And there are people who know about this Akathar, who is a stage magician, and they're like, well, he must be using magic, so we must find him and arrest him. And so it follows like kind of both sides of the story, as well as other characters like a street kid who picks pockets, and people in the stage magician show, like the people who help him with his tricks, and the other people who have acts as well. And it was very fun. It was very exciting. It had a few really sweet moments in it as well that I really liked. And it had a twist that I did not see coming. I find a lot of the times in bigger adult fantasy books, a lot of the times I feel like they can get like bogged down with people planning things or discussing like their options for things. And I feel like this didn't really happen in that. Anytime the story started like it might start going in that direction, it would change points of view, it would bring us to a different character, and then we would get to find out what was going on with them. So the story kept going at like a really, really good pace. So I'm really excited for the next book in the series, which is coming out early this year, I believe, so that's pretty exciting. The next one here is The Prince and the Apocalypse by Kara McDowell. I read this actually because the author had a video on TikTok that went a little viral of her just being upset because she was at a book signing for this book, and just there was a lot of people making really horrible, stupid comments about the fact that she writes YA, which is just horrible. So I looked up her book and I was like, well, that sounds lovely, and I'm gonna get it. And it was lovely. Like, this book was so much fun, and it was so cute. The Prince and the Apocalypse is about a girl who is on a high school senior trip to England. On the last day that they're there, she separates from her friends to try and do one thing that she wanted to do the whole time and never got to. And she ends up running into the Prince of Wales, a fictional version of the Prince of Wales. And she helps him hide from the paparazzi. And it's all very fun and exciting and adorable and silly. And after they finally get away, she realizes, oh my goodness, I am going to miss my flight. What have I done? I've made mistakes. And before she rushes off to the airport, he says, here's my number. If you need any help in the next 8 days, you can call me. And she was like, that was a very strange thing to say. And continues on her way to the airport where she misses her flight. But everyone at the airport is freaking out because there is an asteroid coming to Earth that's going to hit in 8 days. So the prince obviously had like information about this before the rest of the world did, and that's why he said that. And there's no way for her to get home before the world ends to see her family. And so she ends up calling the prince, and they both have places that they want to go for the end of the world. And it is just about them trying to get where they want to go together and helping each other throughout the end of the world to try and get to where they want before the world ends. And then obviously, you know, like they fall in love and stuff. And it's adorable and so much fun. And I think in the acknowledgements, the author said how she had really wanted to write a book about the end of the world, except fun. And that's what this was. It was a book about the end of the world, but it was so much fun. And because because I read that book and thoroughly enjoyed it, I immediately went to the bookstore to try and find more books by her and found this one, This Might Get Awkward, which was just as delightful. This book, I think, was a little less funny and fun than The Prince and the Apocalypse, but it was just as good. It was very cute. It had a lot of cuteness and a lot of really nice, like, heartwarming, wholesome moments in it. So this is about a girl who is in grade 12, I think, or it's the summer before going into grade 12. I think that's what it is. It's like, yeah, the summer before going into grade 12. And she has a crush on this popular guy who doesn't know who she is. Or at least she thinks he doesn't. And him and his friends are at the beach the same day that she is. She's trying to leave because she's like, I'm not cool and I'm very awkward and I have social anxiety and I cannot be here. I must leave immediately. And she runs into this guy that she has a crush on who does know who she is. And he asks her to pretend that they like each other. And then he immediately very badly hurts himself and is rushed to the hospital and needs to be put into a medically induced coma. And during this whole process, everyone assumes that she's his girlfriend. And because he said, could you pretend that we like each other? She doesn't correct them. Also, she wants people to think that they're dating because then they would think she's cool. And then anytime that she decides to come clean about it, something happens that prevents her from telling people the truth. And then she just gets deeper and deeper and deeper into it. And it's really funny. And then she ends up hanging out with his brother and, you know, shenanigans and love ensues. And it was very cute. It has a lot of talk about social anxiety and even clinical depression and just like feeling like you're not good enough, even though you are. And, you know, being convinced that you are good enough and convincing yourself that even if you feel like you're not good enough, that you should know that you are. And all that kind of, you know, like growing up stuff that was great and really well done. The next one here is Lost in the Moment and Found by Seanan McGuire, which is the 8th book in the Wayward Children series. The Wayward Children series is a magical door portal fantasy series, which is delightful. It is, I'm saying delightful for like every book, apparently, this in this video. So it is about a school for teenagers who have gone through magical doorways that led them into magical worlds and lived there for a period of time and then come back to the real world and are having trouble dealing with being back in the real world. Every odd-numbered book is at the school and follows the kids at the school. And every even-numbered book works as a standalone and follows the story of one character and what happened to them when they went through their doorway. So this is one of the standalones because it's an even-numbered book, and it is about somebody who finds this magical shop that has a doorway to like almost infinite worlds. And there's consequences to opening the door and going into all these different worlds. This one has a note at the beginning talking about how it deals with like adults gaslighting children and like emotionally abusing them, which it's only at the beginning of the story and nothing actually ends up happening, like nothing physical happens. But it is still, it's very upsetting to read about. The first chunk of the story is incredibly upsetting. And I feel like it just gave the whole book a different tone from the rest of the series, but it was so good. It was so well done. I love the series so much. It's definitely one of my favorite, I think it's my favorite YA series. The next one here is A Psalm for the Wild Built by Becky Chambers. This is, I want to say a delight, but I've said that word too many times. This is a cozy book. This book is so cozy. Like, there are, like, no stakes in this book at all. Because there's, like, cozy books are, like, defined as low stakes. This is, like, zero stakes. There's no conflict in this at all, except for, like, people's feelings arise. This is about, I can't remember anybody's names. It doesn't even say. This is about a tea monk who's non-binary, which I loved. And a tea monk is a monk who has this wagon that has a whole bunch of different teas, and they like have a bed in it and everything, and they bike with this wagon behind them, and they stop in different towns and set up a table with different types of tea, and then people just come up to them and tell them their problems, and they serve them tea. It's so lovely. But this monk ends up feeling unfulfilled by it after a while and wants to do something for themselves and just go off into the wilderness to find a monastery, I think, of their religion that's abandoned. And the reason it's abandoned is because this takes place in a world that has robots. But many, many, many years ago, before the story started, the robots had like this uprising, basically, where they were like, hey, we are people too. They're not people, they're robots. But but they were like, hey, we have feelings too, and we do not appreciate being used. And so they came up with like a treaty, is that what it's called? They came up with like an agreement for the humans and the robots to be completely separate. So there's certain areas of the world that are just for the robots, so that the robots can live without any human influence whatsoever. And this T-Monk meets a robot, and it's about them becoming friends and traveling together and discovering things and learning about themselves and each other, and it's so amazing and wonderful, and it's so short, you read it so fast, and it's just, it was so good. There's a second one that I haven't read yet. I own it though, I'm gonna be reading it soon, but it was so good, guys. The next one here is another cozy fantasy, but there are stakes. I'm gonna warn you going into this. Anyway, it's Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. It says right on the back here, a novel of high fantasy and low stakes. Those are lies. I'm telling you right now, there are high stakes in this, okay? So do not let the back of the book fool you, and the fact that it is a cozy fantasy fool you. There will be stress. Just not as much stress, and not for as long as most other fantasy books. But there is stress, okay? I'm just warning you because it caught me off guard. Also because of the fact that the rest of the book is incredibly cozy and very, very low stakes and just wonderful and delightful and adorable. And when the things happen that make important things be at stake, it just was like, it was too much. I was not expecting it. And because it was surrounded by so much loveliness, it felt more stressful than it probably would have been if it was surrounded by more stressful things. If that makes any sense. But anyway, this is about an orc who opens a coffee shop in a world where nobody knows what coffee is. That's it. That's all it's about. She hires a succubus, and they form a beautiful relationship while they're opening this coffee shop. But like that's what it's about. I mean, I know when I say that, it sounds like you can't have a good story out of that, but you can. You can, I promise. And like, look at all my tabs. Like, these are all tabs of cuteness and funny, but like, there's so much cuteness. It's so wholesome. It was wonderful. The next book here is a sequel. It is Muse of Nightmares by Laini Taylor. It is the sequel to Strange the Dreamer. Strange the Dreamer is about somebody who travels to a magical land that up until now basically had been thought a myth, to help solve a problem. And it also follows people up in this like magical angel-shaped ship who have magical powers. And there is the person who travels to this magical land ends up meeting someone in his dreams, but turns out it's like real, actually. Like the person that he's meeting in his dreams is like doing it on purpose, and it's not just in his dreams. Like it's happening in his dreams, but it's actually happening in real life, if that makes any sense. A lot of the story is very like whimsical and quiet and cozy. There is stressful stuff, just like the writing style feels cozy, if that makes any sense. And this was no different. It was a big chunk of it was absolutely delightful, but a lot of it was very stressful. But the writing style made it feel calmer because it was a calm writing style, which I really liked. It's one of my favorite styles of books. And I can't say anything about this one because it'll give stuff away from the first one, but this was such a good sequel. I loved these, but I love this and the first one, but I just read this one this year. And my last one here is another fairly cozy book. I'm all about the cozy books this year, I guess. Tress of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson. So this is about a girl who is in love with the Duke or the Prince, someone royalty in her area where she lives. And where she lives, it's this rock basically that's surrounded by sea, but the sea is not made of water. No seas or anything where she lives in her country that is made of water. It's made of spores that are toxic. And they the sea only moves because there's like air underneath, like kind of like if you like make that, like, you know how you can make a sandbox and the sand in it seem liquefied and things can move in it and stuff whenever there's like air coming up from underneath. Anyway, that's how these spore seas work. So the love of her life leaves with his dad to find a wife. And they're both like, well, this sucks. And he's like, don't worry, I will be terrible and no one will want to marry me. And then we can get married when I get back. And she's like, cool. But then the dad comes back with his nephew or something instead of the love of her life. And she's like, excuse me, where is your son? And he's like, gosh, he got captured. Sorry, he's probably dead now. And so it is about her adventuring across all the dangerous spore seas to try and find him. And she, like, ends up on a pirate ship and learns how to work cannons and deal with very, very scary spores that a lot of people are afraid of because they're very unreliable, but they do very cool, intense things. And it is basically just her journey trying to find him and all the different kinds of people and creatures that they meet. I guess that's pretty much all I can tell you about the story without giving anything away, but that is Trust of the Emerald Sea. Also, Brandon Sanderson has a copy of Neighborly. Just thought I'd throw that out there because that's very cool and it makes me feel very cool, so maybe one day he'll read it and my book will be on his list of favorites. Probably not, but that would be so cool. Anyway, those are all the books that I have read in 2023. Very good timing. I have like literally 50 seconds left of recording time. We will see you in the future. Goodbye.